COVID-19 pandemic, the Secretary General said that we must not forget about 3/4 of new infectious diseases are zoonotic. By destroying the ecosystems, he added, we weaken the biological barriers that will keep these viruses at bay, and we ourselves weaken our coping skills. He called for the integration of climate and environmental action into stimulus packages to rebuild sustainable and inclusive economies and societies. He also addressed another session of the forum, but this time by video message, called Finance in Common Summit. He said that in his remarks, he said that public development banks are uniquely positioned to play a leading role in the world's transformation towards carbon neutrality, added that they can also help build the foundation of a new economy fit for the 21st century. The Secretary General said he counts on public development banks to come to the Climate Ambition Summit in December and COP26 next year with concrete plans to realize our vision for a carbon-neutral, resilient, inclusive, and sustainable world. Full remarks are online. And he spoke live at the G77 meeting this morning, the annual ministerial meeting. He said that we are at a historic moment and we face the greatest test of global solidarity in a generation, adding that COVID-19 pandemic continues to inflict unprecedented harm on people, societies, and economies around the world. But within this crisis lies an opportunity, a chance to embark on a path to revive economies, ensure gender equality, protect our planet, and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. His full remarks have been shared with you. For her part, the Deputy Secretary General is continuing her trip to West Africa. She's now in Mali, where she currently is meeting with the Prime Minister and other government officials. Earlier in the day in Niger, Amina Mohamed saw the impact of climate change when she visited sites impacted by some of the worst floods in the country's history. The UN is working with the government of Niger and our NGO partners to build resilience, reinforce adaptation measures, and for affected communities. The Deputy Secretary General spoke with relocated families and members of a fisheries community near the capital, Niamey. Ms. Mohamed also met with a group of girl entrepreneurs who are supported by the UN Population Fund, and she had a second follow-up visit with President Mamadou Issoufou before leaving Mali. And an update on Ethiopia. Our humanitarian colleagues are telling us that they're increasingly concerned over the protection of civilians due to fighting in Tigray. There are reports of civilians moving within Tigray as well as to neighboring Amhara region in search of protection, but we do not have the details. We're also alarmed by already large numbers of Ethiopian asylum seekers who have crossed into Sudan, fleeing the hostilities or out of fear of an attack. Food, health, and other supplies are in warehouses awaiting loading for immediate delivery in Tigray, in addition to concerns over disrupted humanitarian aid to more than 2 million people in Tigray. There's also rising worry about the inability to assess additional humanitarian needs that are likely to spike. The humanitarian coordinator in Ethiopia, Catherine Sozi, is engaging with the government of Ethiopia and others at the highest levels to facilitate immediate and unimpeded humanitarian access. We, along with our partners, are repeating our call for full access to reach people in need, as well as to conduct needs assessments. We're also calling for the safe passage for civilians in search of safety and assistance, and to guarantee security for all aid workers. And we're also calling on the federal and regional authorities to enable humanitarian access to reach people in need in areas under their respective control. And we are committed to staying and delivering humanitarian assistance. The acting special representative for Libya, Stephanie Williams, said that we've had a breakthrough in the Libyan political dialogue forum that's taking place in Tunis. She said the forum's participants had reached a preliminary agreement on a roadmap for ending the transitional period and organizing free, fair, and inclusive and credible parliamentary presidential elections. They outlined the clear steps for reaching these elections, including agreements on constitutional basis. According to the process they outlined, elections will be held in no more than 18 months, she added. The roadmap also outlines steps for uniting Libya institutions, restoring public service, and beginning a process of national reconciliation and transitional justice. Ms. Williams added at the same time that we are under no illusion, and we note that a lot of work remains to be done. Also, I think Stefano has been asking about the plight of the fishermen detained in Libya, and I can tell you that we, of course, remain concerned of their fate. The UN mission in Libya has received a request from the families to help establish contact with the detainees. We are following up in close consultations with the relevant authorities, and we hope the situation will be resolved and that the detainees will be released as soon as possible. Quick update from Central America, where on the follow-up of the hurricane that hit the region in Honduras, the UN Migration Agency has delivered more than 39,000 personal protection items in an effort to mitigate the impact of the pandemic, as well as other items. And Nicaragua, IOM, has also, in coordination with local NGOs, will assist with the delivery of food kits and hygiene kits. And in Mexico, they're also distributing humanitarian aids in the Chiapas region. And from Cambodia, I can tell you that we, along with our humanitarian partners, have launched a flood response plan calling for more than $9 million to help some 237,000 of the most vulnerable people for the next 6 months. Since the beginning of October, Cambodia has been hit by widespread flooding following a number of tropical storms. More than 2 million people have reportedly been exposed to flooding. Some 800,000 have been directly impacted. Livelihoods of more than 175,000 households have also been negatively impacted. And the Philippines, I can tell you that we are working. The initial reports indicate that massive flooding and landslides in several areas of Luzon Island, at least 170,000 people in the affected areas have been evacuated, adding to nearly 83,000 still displaced from the earlier Typhoon Goni last week. We, along with our partners, are supporting the government-led response efforts by providing drinking water, food and shelter materials, and we are ready to assist in conducting rapid needs assessment. Quick note from Kazakhstan, where our country team is working under the leadership of their new resident coordinator, Michaela Freiberg-Story, to help the government deal with the impact of the pandemic. The World Health Organization is discussing Kazakhstan's participation in the COVAX mechanism, which, as you know, aims to speed up the search for an effective vaccine for all countries. And WHO is also providing for the government with new lockdown measures in place. Together, UNICEF and WHO are holding seminars on the use of personal protective equipment, immunization, infection prevention and control, as well as the safe reopening of schools. The UN team procured over $500,000 worth of critical health supplies. During the lockdown, more than 4,600 migrants and victims of human trafficking also received direct support from IOM. And last month alone, the UN team reached some 13 million people with messages on how to prevent the spread of the virus, which is helping curb the spread of misinformation. Just to flag that UNCTAD today, the UN Conference on Trade and Development, says that maritime trade will plunge by 4.1% in 2020 due to unprecedented disruption caused by the pandemic. They warn that new waves of the virus spreading could further disrupt supply chains and economies, might cause a steeper decline. The report also decries the humanitarian and safety crisis caused by the pandemic, when more than 300,000 seafarers have been stranded at sea for months beyond the end of their contract. We reiterate our call to authorities to designate seafarers as key workers and exempt them from COVID-19 travel restrictions. And as you may have seen, the High Representative for the Alliance of Civilization, Miguel Angel Moratinos, yesterday condemned in the strongest terms the cowardly attack that wounded at least 3 people during a ceremony organized by the French consulate at a ceremony in Jeddah. And the full statement was shared with you. And lastly, the UN mission in Central African Republic is telling us that today we're continuing to provide multifaceted support to the electoral process in the country. This support ranges from good offices and political engagement to security, operational, and technical assistance to ensure successful elections. The National Assembly Election Authority has received 22 applications for the presidency, including from one woman, former transition President Catherine Samba Panza. They also received over 1,000 candidacies for the legislative elections, including 153 women. The Constitutional Court is expected to issue a ruling on the validity of those candidacies by December 3rd. The first round of elections, December 27th. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. First, then, on Libya and on the statement that you put out from Stephanie Williams. The plan, I think, originally was for the UN to organise these elections, and clearly we're now getting closer to elections maybe taking place in 2021. What is the UN offering?
Well, we will offer, obviously, whatever support the Libyans are needed. The discussions are obviously still continuing, but we will be there to accompany the Libyans and assess exactly what the needs are for the elections.
So will it be a UN-organised election? Will you provide security, peacekeepers at polling stations? Will you provide the monitoring?
I think it's a little early. I don't believe there will be UN-organized elections, but let me get more details for you on that.
And separately on Libya, sadly again a shipwreck of migrants. 74 currently reported dead. Do you have more for us?
I mean, we have seen these tragedies repeat over and over again of people trying to flee Libya. There needs to be, I think, frankly, greater empathy for the plight of these women, men, and children who are seeking a better life. Part of the solution, obviously, involves dealing with the situation in Libya and making it safer. But it is clear that we have a long way to go on that, though what happened today was a big step forward. But it also underscores the need for better global management of migration and refugee routes. Yes, sir.
Hi, Steph. Thanks very much. Two questions for you today. First one is on Ethiopia and what we're seeing in Tigray. Is the UN involved at a political level in this conflict? And if so, what are they doing?
We, on Tigray, I think, as we've said, the Secretary General has offered his good offices in a conversation with President Abiy, as we said earlier this week. Our special envoy on the ground, Mr. Parfait Nyanga, remains in contact with key players, but it would not be correct to say that we are involved in any negotiations at this time.
Are you hopeful for a resolution of this conflict, insofar as what your work is doing? Are you working towards facilitating negotiations or anything like that?
Well, listen, we will be, as I said, the Secretary General has offered his good offices. Our primary concern right now, as we've been underscoring, is on the humanitarian situation. As we've been saying from here, there's a lack of access, there's a lack of information. The fact that we understand that banks have been closed will have a devastating impact on the economy. Already in that area, you have not only internally displaced Ethiopians, but you also have Eritrean refugees. And the greater instability in Ethiopia is a risk of putting the whole region at risk.
Thank you. And the second question, how concerned is...
I have a follow-up.
Yeah, one second, Abdelhamid.
I just wanted to ask if you're concerned that President Trump has not yet conceded the U.S. election.
I think, as we've said from here, we have full faith in the U.S. institutions. Abdelhamid.
Yeah, I have a follow-up to the same question my colleague asked about Tigray. Sudan said that at least 12,000 refugees had already crossed the border to Sudan, and they're expecting the number to reach 200,000. Is the UN prepared to do something about this?
Yes, I think as we flagged it from here, our colleagues on the ground are already in touch. They've been dealing with the authorities in Sudan. They're obviously very concerned about the impact on the situation, but we've already had, and I think we reported here yesterday, reports of people crossing the border. Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Bays?
Yes, returning to Hong Kong, there's been criticism of the ouster of the lawmakers by the EU and the UK now. China has itself criticised those lawmakers who have resigned in response. Does the Secretary-General have a comment on the situation?
I think you asked me that question yesterday, and I expressed our position.
Okay, well, let me ask you a more specific question then. The Hong Kong system is not a wholly democratic one, but it has democratic elements. Does the Secretary-General support the continuation of those democratic parts of the Hong Kong system of governance?
I think my answer to you yesterday covers your question today.
Well, it wasn't. It was a,
I
general comment about democracy in the world, which is what you resort to when you speak about China every single time. On other countries, you talk specifically
I don't think that's fair. I would ask you to look at the transcript from yesterday. Okay. I'll leave you in Mr. Varma's hands. Before I do that, let me cover my